Order, please. Before we begin the day routine, on the last day of the sitting before we broke, the Honourable Government House Leader asked me to review the transcript from the day before, which would have been the 2nd of November, in regards to comments that were made in the House, and the Government House Leader rose on point of privilege, but he asked that I review the transcript, which I did. All members will remember that the Honourable Member for Preston was in debate at the time and made mention about the issue that was before the House, but particularly brought reference to another member in the House and asked how that member would feel if, in fact, his son was killed in regards to, and the issue at the time was in regards to ATVs. You know, I've read it and I've looked at the issue in regards to point of order, point of privilege. I don't think it really fits with either one of those, but certainly I believe personally that it would fall within the realm of being unparliamentary within this House and in all houses. And I think that members would agree. If you'd read the transcript, I think you'd see that we certainly don't want the level of debate to get down to where we're suggesting anything tragic like this to another member or in fact, any type of issues before the House to make it a personal issue. And I appreciate the fact that one of the deputy speakers was in the chair at the time and that we spoke about it afterwards. Certainly, I think if I was in the chair, I would have brought to the attention of the House that I believe that the comments were unparliamentary, and I would hope that members would reflect upon this in the future in regards to comments that are made, particularly in the heat of the moment in debate. So my ruling would be that I certainly believe the comments were unparliamentary, and I asked all members in the future to cease from those type of comments. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to state that it was in the heat of the moment I made those comments, and I regret them, and I'd like to have them withdrawn.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Thank you. The matter is closed. We begin the day routine. Presenting read petitions. The Honourable Member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition signed by over 250 residents from Clare. The operative clause says, "We, the residents of St. Martin and surrounding communities in Clare, hereby petition the Department of Transportation and Public Works, Province of Nova Scotia, to have the 2nd Division Road in St. Martin repaved immediately as it presents itself as a safety hazard for several years to the motorists and pedestrians." And, Mr. Speaker, I have affixed my signature to the petition.
Petition is tabled. Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And although this petition is directed to the Halifax Regional Council, the Citizens for Brightwood have suggested that since municipal government is a creature of the province, that this petition be tabled in the legislature as well, so that all members of the Legislative Assembly can read the petition. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition with 2,819 signatures, the operative clause reading, "We, the undersigned, therefore urge the Halifax Regional Council to protect Brightwood lands from private development by honoring and perpetuating the present parkland zoning, and 2, beginning a process of wide-reaching consultation regarding public use, ownership, and management." I have affixed my signature.
This is tabled. Table reports of committees. Honourable Member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the chair of the Committee on Resources, I beg leave to table the annual report of the committee 2004-2005.
The report is tabled. The Honourable Member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table the report on the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs for 2005, and Mr. Speaker, give credit to Darlene Henry, our alleged clerk, for all her fine work.
Thank you. The report is tabled. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, as chairman of the Law Amendments Committee, I am directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bill. Bill number 219, an act to amend Chapter 475 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Trade Union Act. Bill number 275, an act to amend Chapter 323 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Off-Highway Vehicles Act. The committee recommends these bills to the favorable consideration of the House with certain amendments.
Agreed. Or this bill is referred to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, could we have the concurrence of the House that those bills be added to today's order paper?
Agreed. So ordered. Tame reports, regulations, and other papers. The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table the annual report for 2003-2004 of the Council of Atlantic Premiers.
Order is tabled. Statements by ministers. The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I read my statement, I would like to make an introduction. We are honored to have with us today in the Speaker's Gallery Mrs. Lynn Donahue and her daughter, Moira Schrader. Also with them are three of Terry's sisters, Sheila Donahue, Ellen Feehan, Kathleen Niedermeyer, and sister-in-law, Carolyn Donahue. I would ask our guests to please rise.
Certainly welcome very special guests to the gallery today, the Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, it cannot be easy for this family to come back to this House so soon after Terry's passing. We all thank them for them being with us today as we pay tribute to our friend, Terry Donahue. I am privileged today to remark on the significant contributions of a man who was definitely a friend to this historic chamber and who brought great dignity to the many roles he held during his 19 years as a member of the Legislative Assembly. Terence Richard Boyd Donahue, or Terry as we all knew him, was an incredible champion of his constituency, his province, his heritage, and of course his family. His wife Lynn and his daughter Moira were the true loves of his life. He was a true family man. His devotion, both in word and deed, his devotion to his siblings and his late parents, of whom he was so proud, was obvious. His love of his province and the traditions of this house were also obvious. He and his brother Arthur were very proud to follow their father's footsteps into public life, and they were naturals. Terry was a tremendous orator. As our leader in the opposition, I was always so impressed when I saw him in action on the floor of this House. He could stand and debate anything, with or without notes, with or without the advantage of preparation. He could also fill any amount of time needed. He often said it took him 10 minutes just to clear his throat. An hour later, he would complete his brief comments. He was a true friend to me and to so many others. We all learned so much from watching him conduct himself, both inside and outside this chamber. Terry represented what is now known as Halifax Citadel from 1978 to 1997. That sort of longevity in politics is an achievement in itself, as all members of this House know. But Terry's contribution to public life can't be summed up merely by his number of years as an MLA. Terry made a difference, and he did so at the highest levels of the provincial government. He held many portfolios, serving as Minister of Education, Attorney General, Chair of the Policy Board, Chair of the Management Board, and interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. While in Cabinet, Terry made many positive changes, but he will forever be remembered for his contributions to the education system. While he made a great Attorney General, he really put his heart and soul into the work that he helped lead while Minister of Education for 8 years, revitalizing the school board system and introducing the first Acadian school board. He also put his heart and soul into the charitable Irish Society, his church, and of course, his golf game. Terry was never one to become flustered. During his term as leader of our party, he brought a caucus defeated in morale and defeated in numbers back to its original fighting spirit. He led us by example and he never let us down, and we certainly didn't want to let him down. A quotation from Václav Havel well describes Terry's commitment to public service. Havel says, "Genuine politics, even politics worthy of the name, the only politics I am willing to devote myself to, is simply a matter of serving those around us, serving the community, and serving those who will come after us. Its deepest roots are moral because it is a responsibility expressed through action to and for the whole." Terry's family said it just right in his obituary. He touched all who knew him with his warmth, his wit, and his wisdom. A truer statement has never been made. Terry Donohoe left his mark on this House. He will be missed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After the two other parties have responded, I would ask for an observation of silence. Thank you.
Recognize the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome the members of the Donohoe family here this morning for this very fitting tribute to the life of Terry Donohoe. I, of course, did not have the privilege of serving with Terry. I did have the opportunity, though, to meet him on many occasions outside of the chamber, and in fact, when he used to come back here to visit. And one was immediately struck by his warmth, by his, to me, particularly how up-to-date he was about what was going on in the House of Assembly and how he followed the issues and continued to have an interest in what was going on, even though he was no longer a member of the House. And he loved to engage on the issues of the day, and he would talk to you about what was going on in the House, any particular issue which he felt was of particular interest to him. I wanted to mention, of course, that my colleague Alexa McDonough, the MP for Halifax, held Terry in extraordinarily high regard, and I think had very warm and glowing comments about him in the paper after his passing. And I know that were she here today, she would want me to express her condolences and her warmest regards to the family. Like so many people, I really knew Mr. Donohoe more as a public figure, and as the Premier has mentioned, particularly as the Minister of Education, where he made such a great contribution to the people of this province. So on behalf of my caucus, we'd like to express our condolences and join with the Premier and the Government Caucus in his tribute to the life of Terry Donohoe. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize the Honourable Member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a privilege to rise on behalf of our leader, Francis McKenzie, and the entire Liberal caucus here today, and former Liberal MLAs who would have had the pleasure of serving with Terry, to express our deepest sympathies to his wife, Lynn, his daughter, Moira, and his sisters, Sheila, Ellen, and Kathleen. As the leader of the official opposition indicated, I arrived here at the same time that he did in 1998, and unfortunately we did not have the privilege of serving with Terry Donohoe, but I, like so many others here in this chamber, prior to our arrival here, took the time to learn how this chamber worked. And having spent 6 years in university here in Halifax, I spent a number of evenings here watching the legislature and watching Terry Donohoe and the leadership that he showed and his abilities as an MLA, and I certainly want to recognize those and certainly thank him for showing me just how easy it can be to speak up to 1 hour on matters when called upon. Terry Donohoe was well respected as a lawyer, as an MLA, as a minister of several portfolios, as the interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, and for the contribution he continued to make after politics to the community of Halifax. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the memory of Terry Donohoe as an Acadian for his efforts in establishing First Acadian School Board in this province, and because of his efforts, it has certainly allowed us as Acadian people to protect our culture, our language, and our identity here in Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, while I didn't serve with Terry here in this House, we had another common link, and that was that we both had the privilege of being associated with the law firm of Blois, Nickerson and Bryson here in Halifax. And through that, I had the opportunity, through many functions, both Christmas receptions and golf games, to have a chance to see Terry outside of politics. And as mentioned by the Leader of the Opposition, how quick he was up to date on what was going on and how quick he'd be able to relate a story of things that had happened in the past, and his memory of this assembly and the respect that he had both for this assembly and both for the members who had served it. And I can assure you I had a tremendous respect for his golf game as well, and pleaded never to be put on his team to have to go through the embarrassment of showing just how bad a player I was compared to how good a player he was. But he certainly never took himself too seriously on the golf course. Mr. Speaker, many of us wish we could have attended the funeral, but unfortunately, many of us had constituency responsibilities and could not make it. But we want to take this opportunity collectively to again express our deepest sympathies. As MLAs, Terry Donohoe was a shining example of the respect that he held for his position, the respect that he held for this legislature, the respect that he held for this province. There is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that his life was cut short way too early. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd ask all members to rise for a moment of silence in memory of the late Terry Donohoe. Thank you. Please be seated. Any further statements by ministers? Government notice the motion. The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future date. I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Chapter 28 of the Revised Statutes of Nova Scotia 1989, the Auditor General Act, as amended by Chapter 13 of the Acts of 2005, provides that, subject to the approval of the House of Assembly by majority vote, the Governor and Council shall appoint a person to be the Auditor General for a term of 10 years, and that the Governor and Council shall remove the Auditor General on the passing by this House of Assembly of a resolution carried by a vote of 2/3 of the members of the House of Assembly voting thereon, requiring the Governor and Council to remove the Auditor General from office. And whereas E. Roy Salmon was appointed by the Governor and Council as Auditor General by Order in Council 92-120, effective February 11, 1992, and has resigned as Auditor General effective February 28, 2006. And whereas an open competition was held for the position of Auditor General by an external selection committee under the auspices of an all-party oversight committee, and since the Governor and Council, by Order in Council, has, subject to the approval of the House of Assembly, revoked the appointment of E. Roy Salmon's appointment as Auditor General effective February 28, 2006, and appointed Jacques Lapointe as Auditor General effective March 1, 2006, therefore be it resolved that A, the revocation of the appointment of E. Roy Salmon as Auditor General effective February 28, 2006 be approved, and B, the appointment of Jacques Lapointe as Auditor General for a term of 10 years effective March 1, 2006 be approved, and I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waivers, is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the House of Assembly has just approved the appointment of the by Governing Council of Jacques Lapointe as the new Auditor General for Nova Scotia effective March 1st, 2006. And whereas the resignation of the province's outgoing Auditor General E. Roy Salmon becomes effective on February 28, 2006. And whereas Mr. Salmon has worked with and encouraged government to continue and improve in public administration and financial reporting that has been put in place by successive governments over the past 10 years. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly thank Mr. Salmon sincerely for his 13 years of diligent service to this province and for his significant contributions to the improvements that have taken place. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Question waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to read a resolution relative to the death of Private Braun Scott Woodfield, and I would ask that, with the approbation of the House, that companion resolutions could be read, following which we could have the moment of silence.
Agreed.
I hereby give notice on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas our nation mourns the loss of another of its soldiers, Private Braun Scott Woodfield of Cow Bay, Halifax County, who was killed on November the 24th in an accident while on duty near Kandahar, Afghanistan, and where his father, Daniel Woodfield, said of his son that while he was skilled with computers, he decided to join the military so he could go to places like Afghanistan where people need help. And whereas, according to his very proud family, Private Woodfield was following a family tradition by serving his country and died doing something he loved to do. Therefore, be resolved that all members of this legislature join with me in paying tribute to Private Woodfield's proud military service to Canada and his selfless dedication during this mission in which he was helping to bring peace to Afghanistan. Our deepest sympathies go now to his family, friends, and fellow soldiers. And Mr. Speaker, before moving the motion, I would ask, with the consent which we have now received, to allow the floor to bring forward companion resolutions, following which I request a passage without debate and ask all members to stand in a moment of silence.
Thank you. We recognize the Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Royal Canadian Regiment 2nd Battalion of CFB Gagetown was deployed to Afghanistan in August 2005 as part of the International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, and has been an integral part of the force and the stabilization of Afghanistan. Whereas Private Braun Woodfield of Cow Bay, Nova Scotia joined the Canadian Army in 2003 and saw service in Haiti with Operation Halo and in Afghanistan with Operation Athena with the Royal Canadian Regiment. Whereas Private Woodfield was killed in the line of duty while on patrol in Afghanistan on November 24th, 2005. Therefore, be it resolved that this House take a moment of silence in recognition of the life of Private Braun Woodfield of the 2nd Battalion, Royal Canadian Regiment, and on the recognition of his death in Afghanistan on November 24th, 2005, and I ask for waiver.
Question waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Nova Scotians and Canadians alike grieved when they heard the news of the tragic death of 24-year-old Private Braun Scott Woodfield of Cow Bay, Nova Scotia. Whereas Private Woodfield died near Kandahar, Afghanistan, doing what he felt he joined the military to do, helping others. And whereas this young man is a stellar example of the many individuals in our armed forces who are dedicated to serving our nation with pride, dignity, and honor. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House extend our deepest sympathy to the Woodfield family and all members of the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment on the death of a son, brother, nephew, and a friend. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried as well. The Premier had requested waiver on his notice. The request for waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. We'll now rise for one moment of silence in memory of Private Braun Scott Woodfield. Thank you. Please be seated. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas supply and managed sectors in Nova Scotia, including farms producing dairy, poultry, and eggs, provide about $200 million in farm receipts a year and represent almost half of the province's farm production. And whereas Nova Scotia has a larger share of supply and managed agricultural production than almost anywhere else in Canada, with 300 dairy farms, more than 100 poultry farms, and 28 egg and pullet raising farms and several egg grading stations. And whereas the World Trade Organization will be looking at market access in Canada to determine if there should be more shares allotted to international commodities wanting to sell in Canada. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House fully support the needs of Nova Scotia's supply and managed industry as Canada heads into negotiations at the World Trade Organization in Hong Kong next week. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request waiver is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Countermanded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution.
You want me to read that for you?
And with my
Here.
I have no further volume. I'm going to defer to my colleague.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my colleague, the Minister of Justice, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution on a future day. Whereas Operation Christmas, a program to combat impaired driving, is organized by police agencies and Nova Scotia's Road Safety Advisory Committee and is sponsored by the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation and Alliant. Whereas law enforcement agencies from across Nova Scotia set up checkpoints in Sydney on December 1st of this year to launch the Operation Christmas initiative. Whereas this year, police will give away 20,000 free Alliant long-distance phone cards as part of this campaign to keep impaired drivers off the road. Therefore, be it resolved that all partners involved, be it resolved, all members of this House congratulate all partners involved in the successful launch of Operation Christmas and thank them for working to make our province a safer place to live. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Countermanded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Human Resources.
I'm going to grab the right one. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this year, our province is launching a new award to recognize public servants for the skill and dedication they bring to the job. And whereas, as the name suggests, the Premier's Award of Excellence will recognize public servants in areas such as innovation, creativity, leadership, excellence, service excellence, corporate citizenship, and relationship building. And whereas any public servant can nominate a colleague or team of colleagues, with nominations to be reviewed by an independent panel of representatives from industry, the public, government, academia. The deadline is December 9th, 2005, with the award winners being announced January 31st, 2006. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this legislation applaud all those public servants who are performing at an outstanding level of service and encourage the nomination of such individuals of teams of public servants for exceptional service to the citizens of this province. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request waivers is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Countermanded nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this week, December 5th to 11th, 2005, is Family Doctor Week in Canada, a week for us to recognize and celebrate family doctors across the province for their commitment to ensuring the best possible care for Nova Scotians. And whereas family doctors are key members of healthcare teams, working with other health providers to diagnose, treat illness and injury, promote disease prevention and good health, and coordinate quality care. And whereas family doctors serve their patients in health clinics, community settings, hospitals, nursing homes, and in patients' homes, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House recognize December 5th to 11th as Family Doctor Week and acknowledge our doctors for the critical role they play in providing high-quality health care to Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Tim Hortons Canadian Curling Trials began November 26 at the Metro Centre as the 10 best men's and women's teams in the country compete for the right to represent Canada at the 2006 Olympic Winter Games next February in Torino, Italy. Whereas billed as the Roar of the Rings, the trials bring together a number of Canadian and world champions as well as hundreds of spectators, media groups, and team members, family, and friends to our great city. And whereas this is a fantastic opportunity for tourism to showcase our wonderful facilities and welcome everyone involved in the Tim Hortons Canadian Curling Trials. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House welcome all of the players, family members, coaches, and spectators who have gathered to take part in this spectacular and exciting event and wish our Nova Scotia teams luck in the competition. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, where are we? I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the International Baccalaureate Program is a universally recognized advanced liberal arts diploma that emphasizes critical thinking and analysis, writing and oral communication, philosophy, community service, athletics, and internationalism. And whereas the IB program is an important part of this government's Learning for Life 2 initiative, one that will help students from across the province to excel in their studies and help them prepare for a successful and prosperous future. Whereas instructors with the International Baccalaureate North America are in Halifax this week to train 128 teachers to deliver the IB program to students in grades 11 and 12 at 10 Nova Scotia high schools, 10 more Nova Scotia high schools beginning in September 2007. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the legislature show its support for the International Baccalaureate Program, the 128 teachers now in training, and our future IB graduates. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. The Honourable the Deputy Premier.
Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas once again we are reaching the end of yet another session, something we could not have done without the able assistance of the staff who support us all in this historic chamber. And whereas our thanks go to Mike Laffin and Peter Theriault, who also served as our Sergeant of Arms, if you remember, in the spring, the staff of our Legislative Library, our commissionaires, and our pages and messengers. And whereas this list also includes the able Legislative Council Office, their staff, and the committee's office staff, our Hansard and Legislative Television personnel, and our catering staff, as well as those who keep this beautiful historic building clean and orderly. Therefore, be it resolved, Mr. Speaker, that all members of the legislature commend and applaud the efforts of those talented and efficient individuals, efforts for which all members of this House are extremely grateful. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, once again, on behalf of my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Justice, Minister responsible for human rights. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Saturday, December 10th, marks the 57th anniversary of the day that the United Nations adopted and proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document drafted by John Peters Humphrey, a fellow Atlantic Canadian. And whereas that declaration was designated to ensure the protection of all peoples, and whereas a number of students from across the province showed their recognition of this occasion by participating in a poetry, essay, and poster conference hosted by the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission and Partners Against Racism today, December the 8th. Therefore, be it resolved that Nova Scotians from all walks of life take a lesson from these youngsters and join the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission on December the 10th, the International Human Rights Day, by working towards an end to discrimination of all kinds. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Such waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Dr. John McNabb is an established and well-respected partner with 8 other family doctors in the Fall River family practice, and whereas Dr. McNabb gives far beyond his family practice by teaching the next generation of family doctors and nurses at Dalhousie University, holding various positions with the Nova Scotia College of Family Physicians, participating on a number of healthcare working groups, and being an active member in his community and church. And whereas the Nova Scotia College of Family Physicians names one outstanding family doctor each year for their embodiment of all that a family doctor is meant to be, a caring, compassionate, and skilled personal physician committed to the health and well-being of patients and communities. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House recognize and applaud Dr. John McNabb for his commitment to his patients, his community, and to his profession, and congratulate him on being named Nova Scotia's Family Doctor of the Year. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas besides becoming a smoke-free hotel and an announcement earlier this week, the Westin Hotel in Halifax was recently named Nova Scotia's leading hotel by the World Travel Awards. And whereas the award was presented to Westin staff at a ceremony in London on November 13th, and whereas Hotel General Manager Guido Kerpel said the award is something all staff are very proud of. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this legislature commend General Manager Guido Kerpel and his entire staff at the Halifax Westin on receiving such a prestigious award and wish them continued success. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Such waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my colleague from Halifax Needham, I beg leave to introduce an act to amend Chapter 5 of the Acts of 1993, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
The Honourable Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage begged leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 5 of the Acts of 1993, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Bill 278, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 5 of the Acts of 1993, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Member for Halifax-Shabakto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Maritime Conservatory of Music and the Maritime Conservatory of Performing Arts Society.
The Honourable Member for Halifax-Shabakto begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Maritime Conservatory of Music and the Maritime Conservatory of Performing Arts Society.
Bill 279, entitled An Act Respecting the Maritime Conservatory of Music and the Maritime Conservatory of Performing Arts Society.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to enter a bill, an act to amend Chapter 10 of the Acts of 1994, the Workers' Compensation Act.
The Honourable Member for Kings West begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 10 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Workers' Compensation Act.
Bill 280, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 10 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Workers' Compensation Act.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce an act to declare the brook trout to be the provincial fish for Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Member for Preston begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to declare the brook trout to be the provincial fish of Nova Scotia.
Bill 281, entitled An Act to declare the brook trout to be the provincial fish of Nova Scotia.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. Notice the motion. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the lack of federal support for long-term care was frequently cited as a reason for the former practice of using seniors' life savings to pay for their care, and whereas lack of direct federal support for home care has made it more difficult for Nova Scotia to provide a comprehensive and readily accessible range of home support services, and whereas the long and growing waiting lists for long-term care beds are creating delays in acute care and imposing severe burdens on many families. Therefore, be it resolved that this House welcome the commitment by the federal NDP leader Jack Layton to a program of federal support to increase the number of long-term care beds and home care services, and urges the other federal parties to support Mr. Layton's plan. Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver and passage without debate.
Question waiver. Here, several noes. Notice is tabled. The honourable member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Basil Buzz Hargrove has been an important member of the labour force in Canada, since he began working at a Chrysler production plant in Windsor, Ontario, and whereas Mr. Hargrove worked diligently in the labour movement throughout his career, helping to form the Canadian Auto Workers and becoming its president in 1992, and whereas on December 2, 2005, the Federal Liberal Party of Canada received a warm endorsement from Mr. Hargrove, stating that the best possible outcome of this federal election is another Liberal minority government. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House of Assembly acknowledge Buzz Hargrove for his infinite wisdom, political acumen, and especially for his support of the Liberal Government of Canada. I would ask for a waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Question waiver. Here, no. Notice is tabled. The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future date. I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the death of Dr. Johnny Miles Williston of New Glasgow is a true loss to a community which has greatly benefited from his over 40 years as a family physician, community leader, and healthcare advocate. And whereas in addition to his career as a family physician, Dr. Williston founded Double Check, a complete health, fitness, and lifestyle assessment service which he ran with his wife Phyllis, and also founded Pictou County Heart Pacers, a cardiac rehabilitation program. And whereas equal to his love of medicine was his love of sports, with one of his proudest accomplishments being the founding the Johnny Miles Marathon in 1975, and participation in the organization and growth of this event ever since. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this legislature offer our deepest sympathies to Dr. Williston's wife Phyllis and his children, and also extend our thanks for the many positive differences this man has made in the lives of so many in our community and our province. And I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas children are Nova Scotia's most valuable resource, and whereas special needs children must be provided the same educational opportunity as other children attending school, and whereas the Cape Breton Victoria District School Board has abandoned the more accurate Canadian model in favor of a less stringent American-based model to assess special needs children. Therefore, be it resolved, the Minister of Education investigate and ensure that all school boards use the Canadian model when doing psychological assessments on special needs children.
Notice is tabled. The honourable leader of the official opposition.
Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas one of the world's major amateur bagpipe competitions, the George Sheriff Amateur Invitational Solo Piping Championship, was held in Hamilton, Ontario on November 19th, and whereas 17-year-old Alex Gandy, a grade 12 student at Auburn Drive High School in Cole Harbour, has been playing the bagpipes since he was 10 years old and is trained by his father, Bruce Gandy, at the Halifax Citadel Regimental Association School. And whereas Alex Gandy, competing against top pipes from across Canada and the United States, won top spot in the George Sheriff Amateur Invitational Solo Piping Championship and was awarded a set of silver engraved pipes and airfare to compete in Scotland. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the House congratulate Alex Gandy for winning this prestigious bagpipe event and wish him well as he finishes high school and goes on to his future education and training on the bagpipes. And Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Richmond.
Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on Friday, November 25th, 2005, Nova Scotia lost a great citizen in the passing of Bill Mingo. And whereas Bill Mingo will be remembered as a strong member and advocate of Nova Scotia's legal community, as both a lawyer and founder of both the Law Foundation of Nova Scotia and Nova Scotia Legal Aid. And whereas Bill Mingo was an active supporter and promoter of the Halifax Port Corporation, serving as chair of the Halifax Dartmouth Port Commission, and in his spare time managed to serve his alma maters, St. Mary's University and Dalhousie University, in numerous initiatives. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House extend their sincerest condolences to the Mingo family and be ever mindful of the valuable contributions made by Bill Mingo in his efforts to make Nova Scotia a better place in which to live. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Guysborough Sheet Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Janelle Culp completed her appointment as Director of the Sherbrooke Restoration Committee this past September.
Yes.
And whereas Janelle Culp began her appointment as Director in 1998 and she has been a member of the Guysborough County Community Health Board for the past 2 years. And whereas for several years Janelle Culp was a community news and events columnist for the Guysborough Journal and has been actively involved in fundraising events for many other community groups. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House thank Janelle Culp for her dedication and volunteer work in the community, and we wish her continued success in the many volunteer positions she currently lends her time and heart to. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Angela Byron spent her summer days submitting code to an open source project by Google called Summer of Code, and whereas Angela was one of 419 students accepted for the Summer of Code out of 8,744 applicants, including those representing some of the best-known learning institutions in North America. Whereas Angela is a proud graduate of the Nova Scotia Community College, having received 3 diplomas from the college, most recently a diploma in information technology programming in June 2005. Therefore, be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate Angela Byron on her programming and academic accomplishments and wish her best of luck in her future endeavours. And I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings West.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on the future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas January the 5th, 2006, the Resource Recovery Fund Board will celebrate its 10th year anniversary. And whereas since 1996, the RRFB has worked with the province and municipalities to reduce the amount of waste going into our landfills, ensuring 1.7 billion beverage containers, 6.1 million tires, and over 600 litres of paint no longer pollute our environment. And whereas Nova Scotia is world-renowned for our commitment to recycling and improving our environment, the RRFB is a major contributor to this reputation and needs to be recognized for those contributions. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House acknowledge the Resource and Recovery Fund Board under the chairmanship of Rick Ramsey for the commitment they have made to ensuring our province has a cleaner future, and congratulate them as they celebrate 10 years of service to Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Chester Grant area will continue to be well protected from forest fires thanks to the hard work and dedication of area residents and the Department of Natural Resources. And whereas the new Chester Grant building will replace an aging facility in the area and will supplement a larger depot in Lunenburg County. And whereas the new facility will house firefighting equipment and Department of Natural Resources staff from April 1st to October 31st annually. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House send out a special thank you to Chester Grant resident Brady Henniger for his hard work to keep the depot open, and to Natural Resources Minister, the Honourable Richard Hurlbert, and staff for their dedication and recognition of the Chester Grant community. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Question waivers, is it agreed? I hear a no. Notice is tabled. Young member, Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
West has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Tom Miller Human Rights Award was named for Nova Scotia's first black alderman, the award recognizes progressive work in the field of human rights. And whereas the Affirmative Action Committee of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality announced that Scott Thomas, the president of the Cape Breton University Student Union, will receive this year's Tom Miller Human Rights Award. And whereas Scott Thomas, a resident of Morrison Road of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, donated 2 months of his salary as union president, $2,000, to fellow student Sean Martell, who has cerebral palsy, and thus enabled him to live on campus in residence with attendant care for his remaining time at the university. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate Scott Thomas for being chosen to receive this year's Tom Miller Human Rights Award, which it will be presented to him on Friday at the Council Chambers in the Civic Centre, Sydney. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for a waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas teaching music is like giving a gift of perpetual joy, and whereas Mr. Chalmers Doan has instilled in his students a love for music and an appreciation for his gift passed on through his teaching. Whereas in September 2005, Mr. Doan was awarded the Order of Canada for his many accomplishments in the field as a music educator. Therefore, be it resolved, this House of Assembly congratulate Mr. Chalmers Doan on receiving the Order of Canada and wish him further success in spreading the sound of music. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver, notice, and passage without debate.
Question waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas each year the College of Family Physicians of Canada acknowledge the compassion and dedication of 10 physicians across the country by awarding 10 Family Physician of the Year awards. And whereas award recipients are chosen by their peers for providing exceptional care to patients and making meaningful contributions to the health and well-being of their communities. And whereas Nova Scotia's 2005 Family Physician of the Year award recipient is Dr. John McNabb, a partner in the Fall River Family Practice. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of the House congratulate Dr. John McNabb on this distinct honour and wish he and his family all the best in the times ahead. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Kings Tech Campus Learning Centre has been relocated to a bigger and better facility on the Kings Tech campus in Kentville, and whereas the new daycare facility boasts a new infant centre with 8 spaces, 6 additional preschool spaces for a total of 24, and a toddler room with 12 spaces, so that total capacity rose from 30 to 44. And whereas Director Krista Toole helped to develop and plan the new site, which created 4 new staff positions. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate the staff at the Kings Tech Campus Learning Centre on opening their new facilities and wish them continued success in the future. I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on November the 21st I had the opportunity to attend the grand opening ceremony of Phase 1 for the Michael Wallace Community Playground, and whereas through the hard work and dedication of many people, including committee co-chairs Joe Durian and Eric Parsons, and the former school principal, the former principal of the school, Mr. Speaker, Anne-Marie Sardo, the school now has an age-appropriate physical activity playground for ages 9 to 12. And whereas this kind of achievement is a shining example of a community working together to reach a goal, therefore be it resolved that this Legislative Assembly congratulate the teachers, parents, administrators, community members, and students for volunteering their time and resources to build Phase 1 and wish them success with the next phases. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Request waiver is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on Tuesday, November 22nd, 2005, we lost both a great Canadian and Nova Scotian when Charlie Keating passed away. And whereas journalist Gabrielle Bailey once wrote, "Never respect men merely for their riches, but rather their philanthropy," forget that one, as we do not value the sun for its height, but for its use. And whereas Charlie Keating's business experience and successes were known to all, he will best be remembered for his community involvement and support of such organizations as St. John's Ambulance, the Brain Injury Association of Nova Scotia, his alma mater, St. FX University, Pawanza, and the Queen Elizabeth II Health Science Centre. Therefore, it be resolved that all members of this House extend sincere condolences to the Keating family and be ever appreciative of the contributions Charlie Keating made to our province. And I'd ask for waiver.
Question waiver is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Eastern Shore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on Saturday, December the 3rd, 2005, the musical group Gospel Harmony held a CD release at the Jador Baptist Church, causing great excitement in the community with their first CD. And whereas I was very pleased to attend the event and listen to their new CD that consists of a very pleasant collection of old-time country and gospel music. And whereas Gospel Harmony is made up of 5 local musicians who volunteer their time and talent to benefit community organizations and local charities, also performing at local museums, churches, summer fairs, senior complexes, nursing homes, and the Veteran Hospital. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House thank Gospel Harmony for their generosity of time and talent to their community and wish them continued success in their musical endeavors. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice. Thank you.
Question for waiver is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax, Shabakto.
Thank you. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Ron McNeil has served as president of Halifax Shabakto Minor Baseball for 6 years, but is not reoffering for that position. And whereas since 1999, Shabakto Minor Baseball has gained 50% more members, major improvements in Larry O'Connell Field and its clubhouse, and success in its growing rep program. And whereas Halifax Shabakto Minor Baseball won the 2005 Association of the Year Award from Baseball Nova Scotia, therefore be it resolved that this House congratulate outgoing President Ron McNeil, the directors, volunteers, and players of Halifax Shabakto Minor Baseball for their growth and success in recent years as they ensure that every player is a star. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waiver is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the village of Chester lost a great friend and leader when Joe Saunders passed away on November 22nd, 2005, and whereas Joe served both his country and community with a quiet dignity and respect that won't soon be forgotten, and whereas the Shoreham Village Senior Citizens Complex, Branch 44 of the Royal Canadian Legion, and the Chester Basin Volunteer Fire Department are examples of the many organizations which reap the rewards from the talent and dedication Joe exhibited throughout his life. Therefore, it be resolved that all members of this House extend our sincere condolences to the Saunders family and always remember and appreciate the great contributions Joe made to both his country and community. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for waiver, please.
Question for waiver is agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this year, being the Year of the Veteran, I found it appropriate to hold a Year of the Veteran Scholarship Contest and received 140 entries. And whereas we narrowed it down to 11 winners, which was very hard to do because of the impressive content of the answers to the question, as a young Canadian, why is honouring our veterans important to you? And whereas 8 schools participated, New Ross Consolidated, Forest Heights Community School, Gold River Western Shore Elementary, Chester District, Chester Area Middle School, Tantallon Junior High, Tantallon Elementary, and Sir John A. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate the 11 winners and 8 schools that participated in the contest. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contraminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Elizabeth Sutherland School teaches students from grades primary through 9 in a forest setting near Kidston Lake and the famed Rocking Stone of Spryfield. And whereas Principal Glenn Taylor and musical director Bernard Curtis Williams have been inspired by students and surroundings to write a musical play, Skyhawk, portraying forest animals struggling against a tyranny of rats and weasels. And whereas students and staff have rebuilt the school stage, recorded a CD, and with great wit and energy on the November 9th and 10th presented this play, therefore be it resolved that this House congratulate staff and students of Elizabeth Sutherland School on the world premiere of Skyhawk, wish all of them many broken legs in their future stage careers, and success always in struggle against the tyranny of rats and weasels. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contraminded, nay. Motion is carried. The member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Canada's House of Commons has unanimously adopted a motion supporting supply-managed commodities of eggs, poultry, and milk to ensure a fair and equitable income for producers. And whereas the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Federal Minister of Trade will be participating in a World Trade Organization negotiations in Hong Kong next week. And whereas our Provincial Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Chris D'Entremont, will lead a delegation of stakeholders to Hong Kong with a commitment to maintain a strong and effective supply management system. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of the House support the position that there will be no changes to our national supply management system and tariffs will be maintained at the current level so that our farmers can continue to produce the right amount of great quality product to meet the needs of Canadian consumers. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contraminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Cobequid Education Centre Cougars won the 2005-2006 NSSAF Division I Boys Provincial Volleyball Championships held at Sackville High, and whereas the Cougars defeated West Kings in 3 sets in the championship match ending the Wolverines' 3-year reign, whereas the team's success was due to phenomenal team effort, great coaching, and student and family support, therefore be resolved that all members congratulate the CEC Cougars players, Coach Harvey McCachran, and team officials in winning the NSSAF Division I 2005-06 Boys Provincial Volleyball Championship and wish them success in their future challenges. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Waivers agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contraminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on November the 19th, the Pacer Club of Pictou held their official opening on the 2nd floor of the old CN station in our town, and whereas the focus of this club will be to provide a secure and fun place free from alcohol and drugs for area residents, and whereas with the support of the municipal units in Pictou County, plus the hard work and planning of Eric Daly of Addiction Services, the Pacer Social Club will provide a valuable space for people to relax and enjoy themselves. Therefore, be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate the many volunteers, the municipal units from Pictou County, and the staff at Addiction Services, and in particular Eric Daly, for their work to bring the Pacer Social Club into existence, and wish them future success in this important endeavor. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contraminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Mariette Goshen of Clayton Park opened the Centennial Break Shop 13 years ago in the Centennial Building in Halifax, and whereas the Centennial Break Shop has grown and prospered as a successful coffee shop serving not only the tenants of the Centennial Building, but also many customers from the surrounding businesses as well. And whereas with the upcoming closure, many people will miss the wonderful food and friendly service given by Mariette and her staff. Therefore, be it resolved that members members of this House recognize the quality service and meals of the Centennial Break Shop that the Centennial Break Shop has provided over the years, and wish Mariette and her family every success as they move on to future endeavours. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. Now, member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Where statistics show that bullying occurs every 7 minutes in Canadian schools and that up to 15% of students are bullied. And whereas 19 students in Hants East Rural High attended a 2-day anti-bullying workshop this year, and whereas the grade 9 and 10 students in Hants East have now started an anti-bullying league to promote tolerance and respect in their school. And therefore be resolved this House congratulate the students of Hants East Rural High on their commitment to tolerance and respect for all students and their determination to tackle the issue of bullying in their school. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the citizens against strip mining have been adamantly opposed to the stripping of coal from the very beginning, and whereas the citizens against strip mining have lobbied the government to ban any form of the stripping of coal as reclamation mining or remediation, and whereas the loss of water is imminent and is the top priority for Chasm, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House lobby the Minister of Environment and Labour to allow a 30-day extension as requested to respond to the cumulative study recently completed. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver and passage without debate.
Question waivers are agreed. Here no. Notice is tabled. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Dartmouth Imperial Oil Refinery has grown continuously since it started operations in 1918 to meet the demands of the First World War and is currently investing $150 million in production and infrastructure upgrades. And whereas the refinery is a leader in industrial safety performance with more than 5.5 million hours worked without serious injury, and whereas the refinery's 200 employees and 70 contracted staff exemplify a high level of professionalism and work ethic, therefore be it resolved that the members of the Nova Scotia House of Assembly congratulate Imperial Oil and Esso as they celebrate their 125 years of service in Canada, and thank them for their generous support to community organizations and initiatives within the Halifax region.